After 13 years of waiting, a new Half-Life game was announced in November 2019, and, to many people's disappointment, as a VR-only title. To those who already owned VR though, it looked like the future of the platform. I was one of the people who didn't own VR at the time, but damn, did the future look good. Then, just a few days before the release of Half-Life Alyx on March 20th, 2020, I saw Oculus Rift S at a discounted price and decided the future would be now. I got the VR headset, played through a few other games, and on release of Half-Life Alyx, I jumped into, without a doubt, the best VR experience currently available, and possibly the best first-person shooter campaign currently available on any platform. Immersion into a world unlike anything I've experienced before, and the most fluid VR action out there. To top it off, this is one of the best stories within the Half-Life franchise as well. This is why you should play Half-Life Alyx. Before we begin, there will be minor spoilers throughout this review, mostly in terms of mechanics rather than story. I will discuss the ending of the game later in the review though, and I will warn you before that starts. So make sure to avoid any of that if you want to stay spoiler free. Also, this is my first time recording in VR, so sorry for any terrible shots in advance. The game starts off with Alyx Vance, your point of view for the game, overlooking City 17. The main location during the start of Half-Life 2, and set 5 years prior to the events of Half-Life 2 Episode 2. In VR, the city looks incredible. The details you can see and the feeling of verticality is amazing. Around you are objects for you to pick up and interact with, allowing you to see the depth of movement of your hands within this game. Then, you have to move forward. This is where you're probably gonna need a few minutes. This is the first VR game I've played that allows for full freedom of movement with the analog sticks. And holy hell, did my brain not enjoy this when I first tried it. Your eyes are telling your brain that you're moving, but your body is not moving, so your body tries to react to the signals it's receiving from your brain, and it's the most bizarre feeling imaginable. I was wobbling and dizzy and just couldn't handle it at first. Thankfully though, you can switch to teleportation movement, which is much more common in other VR games. However, I highly recommend you hold out with full analog stick movement. It makes the game much more fun to explore, and after about an hour or so, I personally got used to it. You can also customize the movement pretty heavily to find out what works for you. Thankfully, the game gives you lots of time to get to grips with VR. Valve has been very clever in their game design here, in that the first hour or so is mostly just getting used to moving around in the world. No guns, no enemies, just taking in the sights and getting your VR legs. To many people, this is their first VR game, and to many others, this is the first one with this scale of movement. So by slowly introducing you to its mechanics, Half-Life Alyx stops you from feeling overwhelmed. What's strange is if you played this outside of VR, this would be a very long-winded introduction with no action, but because VR is so new to people, this works perfectly. After wandering through the city, you meet Russell, who will be Alyx's guy in the chair for the rest of the game. He advises you on where to go, and most importantly, provides you with your first gun.
I almost forgot! Alyx, up here! You're gonna need a gun! Don't worry, it's unloaded. It's unloaded now!
You get to shoot some targets and learn about the awesome realism of how to reload. You press a button to release the magazine. If you do so before you've emptied it, you have wasted those bullets, unless you pick that mag back up and put it back in. Or you load in a new mag. If you had a bullet in the chamber, you're all good to go. Otherwise, you will need to cock back the chamber and load the first round. It sounds really boring and basic, but when you're in intense battles later in the game in full VR, it's exhilarating. I finally know what Revolver Ocelot was talking about in Metal Gear Solid 3. Moving forward, the game starts you off with some easy enemies, roof barnacles. You know, the things with the long tongues that drag you up into the roof and try to eat your head. As long as you don't touch their tentacles, you can kill them with no problem at all. Then you start getting head crab zombies and head crabs. Slow moving enemies that, as long as you keep your distance, aren't that big of a threat. The head crabs are a bit more of a threat though, due to how they are hard to hit and that they keep leaping around and trying to eat your face. You have to pull or shoot them off to get rid of them. Thankfully, the game starts you off with only a few at a time, giving you the chance to train yourself up to more difficult encounters. Later, you will get combined soldiers with guns and more that I won't discuss here. The game has a very natural flow of progression with its difficulty and mechanics. The fact that Valve pulls this off so well, even in VR, is truly a sign of some great developers at work here. No wonder this took so long to develop. This game must have been heavily playtested. The game then continues on in your usual Half-Life fashion, linearly moving your way through multiple environments, story beats, and solving multiple puzzles. Now you'd think, after 13 years of technological advancements, Half-Life would no longer have a loading zone problem. Well, guess what? It definitely does still have that, and even worse than it used to be. I assume due to how heavy the game is on your hardware, it needs to load smaller chunks of the game at a time to run smoothly. So every so often, you get one of these. If you die, you're gonna go through it again. It's about as frustrating as it sounds, but for how good the game is, you can let it slide. Thankfully, since VR doesn't really work well with jumping, there are no real platforming sections throughout the game. You instead just teleport from platform to platform to get around. To replace these platforming sections, you instead get more environmental puzzles based around using Alyx's multi-tool to hack equipment, power lines, and more. These puzzles are quite interesting. Outside of VR, they wouldn't really work, as they would either be too easy, boring, or both. In VR though, moving a holographic orb in one hand and guiding a laser with the other is surprisingly fun, despite it really not sounding like it would be, and it feels like something that can only really work in VR. Powerline puzzles are really interesting, but do become a little bit awkward when the cable goes through to another room or past a small object. You can't really angle your hand correctly to see where it's going, and occasionally Alyx's in-game hand will catch onto a wall. It's awkward, but it's certainly not game-breaking. I imagine with a few updates, this could be fixed. So that's puzzles, but what about the combat? Well, I've already covered the pistol and the beauty of reloading realistically in VR, but let's talk about actually shooting stuff. Bottom line, it's the most satisfying shooting in VR and has some real weight to it that a lot of other games just don't have. I played the game on hard mode as well, making each encounter feel like a real challenge where just a few hits could mean death. Sadly, you only obtain 3 guns in the whole game: the pistol, a shotgun, and a machine gun, all of which are one-handed. According to Valve, this was by design. A gun with 2 hands just never feels quite right in VR, since there is nothing physically to restrict you in the way a real gun would. Thankfully though, each gun is great to use and can all be upgraded as well. Each one has a unique reload style, forcing you to think about what gun you're using during combat and reload it in the right way. Even hunting around for ammo is exciting, as you dig your way through shells of junk, open up cupboards, drawers, and dig through boxes and cars to find everything you need. It sounds really dumb reading this out loud, but when you're in VR, it feels amazing to do, and something that other games have tried to replicate, but never feel as good as they did in VR. Even knowing how much ammo you have left is interesting, as you have to look at the display on your hands or your weapons to see what's left, and throwing grenades around feels even better in VR, as you have to realistically throw it to get the right distance and hit your target. It's things like this that make me realise this game simply would not be good without VR. In reality, this game is actually quite basic, and with a mouse and keyboard, this would really show through and make the game incredibly easy. You never get more than a handful of enemies on screen at once, and honestly, their AI isn't the brightest. They mainly just shoot at where they think you are without tactically thinking about how to attack you. With a mouse and keyboard, this would be like shooting fish in a barrel. With VR though, with bullets flying around your head and you having to physically aim your hand to make the shot, it's tense, difficult, and completely new. You have to physically crouch down to hide behind a low wall or pick up and throw back an about to explode grenade. You have to bring the holographic sight close to your eye to aim down it. You have to lean your head around a corner to see what's happening, and even as simple as having to open a door during combat is immersive and exciting. No matter how ridiculous this all sounds, trust me, once you have experienced it, you will love it. There is a mod for this game that allows you to play with mouse and keyboard, but I highly advise any that are tempted to play it to hold out for the true VR experience. Without the headset, it will give you the impression the game is basic, easy, and not really that imaginative. This game is a prime example of how the format of a game completely changes it. Imagine Wii Sports with a regular controller. Imagine House of the Dead or Time Crisis without a light gun. Imagine Guitar Hero with just an Xbox pad. It's boring, it's awkward, and it's completely unimaginative. But if you're using the right equipment, the games are great. One final thing before I discuss some spoilers, and that is the atmosphere that VR can give you. This game is horrifying in places. I am normally good with horror games since I can distance myself from what's happening on screen. A dark corridor may be horrible in Resident Evil 2 Remake, for example, but imagine something being strapped to your head with a view of a dark sewer. There's a hanging body at the end of it, with a torch being the only light source in the room. You know there are enemies down there and you have little ammo left. It takes a lot to convince yourself to go down there and get the torch, knowing the game is going to fuck with you at any second. The music throughout the game is also exciting and perfectly sets the mood for each scene, and graphically, well, you can see for yourself how amazing this game looks, and the sound effects make it even more immersive, with every environmental detail coming through even on the standard Oculus Rift S speakers. Okay, so this is your final warning for spoilers. I'm about to discuss a key area of the game and then the ending. If you want to stay spoiler free, you can skip to the time code on screen now. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Well, fuck you, Jeff. Actually no, fuck you Valve for making Jeff, because if a dark sewer with loads of enemies is horrible, imagine enclosed areas with no lights but your torch and an unkillable enemy that can't see you but hears every sound you make. Well, that's Jeff. If you are familiar with The Last of Us, you will know what a clicker is. Resident Evil 2, the licker. Well, Jeff is that in Half-Life's universe, but in VR. You have to solve puzzles and dodge Jeff for a good hour in basically the pitch black darkness. You cannot even stun him with bullets. You have to throw bottles instead and other objects to get him to move to where you want him to be. To top all of this off, you have to constantly cover your mouth physically so that Alyx doesn't cough around him, meaning you either can't use your torch or the multi-tool you need to solve puzzles. Now finally, let's discuss that ending. Partway through the game, you find out that Gordon Freeman is trapped inside a Combine ship floating high above the city. You work your way in, go through a mind-melting scene of gravity-changing rooms, and come to the center of the ship, with a prison holding who else but the G-Man. He thanks Alyx for freeing him and offers her a favor. She asks to get the Combine off of Earth. He refuses and instead offers her something she doesn't yet know she wants: to save her father from his death in the future, or the ending of Half-Life 2 Episode 2. He sends her to the future, she kills the creature attacking her father, Eli Vance, and then she disappears. The G-Man states that Alyx is a suitable replacement for their last employee, Gordon Freeman, who has become uncooperative, working with the Vorgonts to stop him. So he walks away in his usual magic doorway fashion, the screen fades to white, and this appears. Alyx Vance hired, awaiting assignment. The game ends, you get some credits, but then afterwards it cuts to a view of Eli Vance talking to you. You look down at your hands to realise you are now Gordon Freeman. You are handed a crowbar, and the game ends. The ending literally changes the ending of the last game. Alyx is now gone, 5 years in the future, and Eli Vance is alive again. Anyone who thinks this is a spin-off of the main games or insignificant to the rest of the story, you are incredibly wrong. If you want to know what the hell is going to be happening in Half-Life 3, which must be in development for VR by now, you need to play this game. To those who skipped the spoilers, welcome back. To sum up, Half-Life Alyx is absolutely incredible. It is without a doubt the best VR game available. Its mechanics, its story, its overall gameplay and presentation are all miles above anything else in VR. Not only is it the best VR game, I would say it's one of the best games in general. For me, it was better than both Black Mesa and Half-Life 2, and if this game is anything to go by, Half-Life 3 will be even better. The developers can learn from the small mistakes they made in this game and expand on all of the things it did incredibly well. To top it off, this is just the actual game. As usual, Valve has released full modding tools for the game, and we are already starting to see things like Horde mode mods being made, and the aforementioned mouse and keyboard mod. That's just after a few weeks since release. Could we see a Counter-Strike, Portal or Left 4 Dead mod? Only time will tell, but until then, the base game is absolutely worth your time and money, and I cannot wait for Half-Life 3, which has to be in development for VR by now. Who knows? Maybe Valve really can count to 3. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Phil, I'm the creator of the Pixel Tavern. It's been a crazy couple of months and I'm sure you all know why, but I am hopefully able to get back on track with videos now. I hope you all enjoy the new channel intro, outro, logo, and the overall look. Special thanks to the creator of the song as well, Chris, and the graphics, James. You can check out their social media channels in the description below. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to help out the Pixel Tavern. As always, if you want to see more of my videos, there are more on screen now. Till the next video everyone, stay safe and thank you very much for watching.